Are you ready to become awesomer? Hello everyone, my name is Umar. I'm your host on the No Limit Selling podcast, where industry leaders share their tips, strategy, and advice on how you can become better, stronger, faster. Just before we get started, I've got a question for you. Do you have a negative voice inside your head? We all do, right? I'm going to help you remove that voice in under 30 days guaranteed. Not only remove it, but transform it. So instead of the voice that sabotages you, there's one that propels you to much higher levels of performance and success. There's a link in the show notes. Click on it to find out more. All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to have a great show. I've got Pete Ryan. He is the co-founder and co-CEO of CoSell. And we're going to talk about, how to get two sales organizations within one company to come together in a way that we maximize our ability to sell. And it's going to be a fascinating conversation because ultimately at the end of the day, it's about how much revenue we bring into our organizations, because that keeps the lights on, that allows us to expand, that allows us to make a bigger impact. And I'm Umar Hamid, your host, and the website you can reach me on is No Limit Selling. And if you go there, we've got this plan to help you double your sales this year. Go check it out. And I want to welcome Pete. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Umar. Appreciate you having me.
It's really interesting. Just within a sales organization, you have different people in the sales organization. You have some A players that walk on water, do magnificent things. And then you've got the B players that do a good job. And then you got some C players that maybe they should do something else. So kind of what are your thoughts on that? Why do we have those three food groups in a sales organization? And how do we get more B players to step into the A column?
Yeah. So, this kind of brings me back to, as head of enterprise sales at Trello, right? So, Trello, project management software. And so I think, every team is going to have that, right? You're going to have your A players, B players, and hopefully not any C players, right?
But the reality is we got them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so, I think how you manage up the B players, right, is getting them on a cadence, right? And that I've always found that to work because that's worked.
By cadence, you mean?
Cadence meaning, just like very like regular checkups, right? Around, where's your pipeline at, right? And if your pipeline is there, let's dig into it and figure out like where the reps are kind of falling flat in the sales process, right? And so if the pipeline's not there, then unfortunately we have to go to activity, right? And I think similar to like working out, right? There's kind of this compounding effect that you have,
yes,
and doing it regularly, right? And so that's why I was like leaning back at the cadence. And I think that's more of like a, management strategy more than anything. I think that for everyone in sales these days is just having a really difficult time with prospecting. I think especially with this tidal wave, which has been the pandemic, right? Buyers they're not at their desk phones anymore, right? They're getting inundated with so many emails. LinkedIn, which used to be like when you get an email, you're like, awesome, I got an email, and now it's just flooded with emails. And so I think being able to fill the top of the funnel is a challenge that every company and every sales team is facing. And so I'd love to chat about it, but I've got a lot to say in this regard. But
we're gonna get there. So one of the things before we go deeper into this topic really is people that are the best at their craft. It could be track and field stars. It could be salespeople. It could be whatever. People at the top of their field are always looking for what's that freaking edge I can use to improve just a little bit. If I get that little bit, and there's that constant need for improvement and nothing massive. And so we're talking about, those phone conversations.
Yeah.
If we could figure out, I don't care about the entire sales call because I think it's totally crap, but I do care about the first 6 seconds. Like if I could make you world-class the first 6 seconds, then you get the next minute of conversation. Then we can focus on the first minute of conversation and slowly. So I think part of it is cadence and part of it is really getting people to buy into the fact that I need to be improving and my sales manager is going to help me. Nothing big, but what's the smallest thing I can focus on this week? And it just compounds as we go.
Yeah. Yeah. And it feels like, mindset, it plays so much into that, right? Because
Absolutely.
if you're, waking up every day, right. And you're happy and excited about what you're doing, you're going to achieve great things. And I think like, in order for you to get even to that point, there's obviously, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Yes.
And like all that bottom layer kind of has to be taken care of, right?
Survival. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, which has become really difficult in the like pandemic, right? And I think, people are kind of earning for this, human connection, right? And you can get it kind of through Zoom, but it's still difficult. So I think a lot of companies have had to rethink how they're engaging their salespeople. I think personally, right? Like sales can be a very manic depressive job,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Because
definitely.
like one day you're just on top of the world, you just close the deal, and then the next you falling flat on your face. And so I love what you do in your business, right? Because you really get down to the core of what motivates people and
Yeah,
drives
yeah.
them, right? And so I personally, we talked about this last time, right? But for me, Hakomi, right, has been a game changer, which is essentially guided meditation, right? And so I'll jump on, once a week with Mike Williams. He's based here in Austin. We'll
Hello,
jump on
Mike.
a Zoom. Hey, Mike. um, great guy. Obviously, he's been doing this for nearly a decade, right? And before this was even really a popular thing to do, and I wouldn't even say it's a popular thing. It's become more well known, which is doing these guided meditations, and like you kind of go to these places in your subconscious that you're typically just not going to go, and you can uncover a lot of kind of past experiences that have molded you today, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
So,
before
yep.
we go into your career more, which I want to do, one last thought on it. It's really intriguing that you get a sales rep that has a good freaking day and they
Right.
get some wins on the board, and certain salespeople will take their foot off the gas.
Yep.
And it's really intriguing. And other salespeople are like, yeah, that was yesterday. Now what do I need to do? And they just put the foot in the gas. And if we can just figure out what mental block gets them to ease up and change that, and that's kind of been my life's work. But let's dig down to your career. You're like at Trello, and you get absorbed by who?
Yep. Yeah. So I'm at Trello, right? And I've been in sales for 10 years at this time, right? I started off at Oracle and then LinkedIn, then Double Dutch, then started my own company, then landed at Trello, which was really my the favorite work experience I've ever had, right? And so Trello gets acquired by Atlassian, right? And Atlassian's this, Australian company that, go ahead. What'd you say?
Behemoth.
Behemoth, huge company. And so, I think at the time, Atlassian has like 100,000 customers. Trello has, maybe around 500 enterprise customers. So I was really excited about the acquisition, right? Because it was like, now we're able to kind of, leverage the Atlassian sales team to get in front of more accounts, right? And so, I think one learning we had really quickly was that leveraging that Atlassian sales team was just that was um, a huge undertaking, right? Because you have two different CRMs, right? Which is, we're both on Salesforce. We created this Slack channel called Referrals for Sales. So, someone from the Trello side would go in there and say, hey, who on that Atlassian side has a relationship at General Electric, right? And then, Jill would raise her hand and she'd say, hey, that's me. Let me make the intro, right? And so that's kind of, that in itself like turned on this idea for CoSell, which is a company I recently co-founded. And yeah, I'll pause
Pause
there.
there for a minute. We'll go to co-sell in a minute. So what you described is a wet dream for a salesperson.
Oh,
This is
100%.
amazing. I'm going to
Right.
ask who I want, and somebody from the other side that has a relationship is going to put up her hand and say, I'm going to do a warm introduction. So, A,
Yeah.
did that happen? And what actually happened in real life?
Yeah. So what happened in real life was that the Trello sales team would like ask for the warm intro. I'd say eight out of 10 times, right, the warm intro would actually happen, right? Because generally we're all part of the same company, right? So there's aligned incentives there, and the issue though is like we were never able to really celebrate any sort of success, right? From like, the deal would close right from the warm intro, and I think I mean everyone probably listening, right, understands the value of referrals and warm intros over just like a cold outreach, and so it was impossible to track. We ended up doing this like externally, also with partners. So there was a company called Unito that integrates with Trello, and we would send over a spreadsheet of all of our prospects and customers, and they would go through it and do a VLOOKUP to find out like where there's overlap, and then we do the warm intros. But it just like simply didn't scale. There were like these security issues right around it of like sharing customer data, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the reality, right? Is it worked. We were able to drive some business from it, but we couldn't really scale or automate it, right? And so that's, again, that's kind of what has led me to, my life's work, I would call it, right? It's like what I'm working on now is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Cool. So tell me about, let's go back to that just for a moment, then we'll go to co-sell because it's really important.
For sure.
Is what you mentioned was, there wasn't a way to really celebrate what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And even though it's the same company, this a difference in me getting public recognition for I helped you land GE as an account.
Right.
And so that's like basic psychology 101. So why do you think that was missed?
Yeah, it was, when you don't have, I'm going to say it's because of software, right? It's, when you don't have software wherever there's one single source of truth for this type of activity.
Yes.
Things are going to fall through the cracks, right? Because it's all happening offline. And so, when you think about just, technologies that have popped up in the last couple of years, right? For instance, like Gong and Chorus and Jiminy, right? For, call recording, right? And being able to coach reps, right? Like that was a big, fundamental shift, right? In how salespeople operate. And a lot of salespeople threw their hands up and said, "Oh, I don't want to be recorded." But, at the end of the day, it's like this like black box is now like revealed, right, to the whole company. And all this like new coaching can happen to up level talent, right? And so that's how I would respond to that, right? Is you're missing technology to fill that gap, right, of things that are happening offline.
And when you make it easy for people to do, if you got to go to another spreadsheet and go here and do that, nobody does extra work. So you came up with oh Lord, we need something new. And who thought of co-sell, and how did the partners come together, and who are your co-founders?
Yeah. So, after we kind of saw what happened with Atlassian, right, and like being able to co-sell internally, being able to co-sell it externally, I brought on an advisor. His name's Brendan Cassidy. He's now a co-founder at co-sell. Nice. But he had been thinking about this problem for a long time, right? Because we were both at LinkedIn. He was employee 15 at LinkedIn. I was early, not quite as early as he was, but I probably joined around between 200 and 250 employees. And so we always thought like, oh, LinkedIn is for sure going to solve this problem, right? Because you have all the professional data, the professional graph. You can kind of see who's connected to who. But I think when it just like hasn't been LinkedIn's real focus, right? It's been about growing the LinkedIn ecosystem, right? And the recruiting business, that's like the largest business of LinkedIn, right? And so so Brendan joined, right, as a co-founder. He was like, "Hey, how do I get involved here?" Right? Which is I'm so fortunate to have him because he's been a VP of sales, CRO, many times over. And then we met up with Andrew Burleson, who's our CTO, and I know him through Atlassian. Right. And so we kind of have we're excited, right? It's like this perfect storm of, demand gen has just gotten so crazy hard. Salespeople are earning for something, to break, allow them to break into accounts. Companies want to go at it not alone, but rather together. And then, we have this team. It's like kind of all coming together, and it feels right, compared to my
Nice.
last startup for sure. So
So tell us about CoSell. What does it actually do? And walk me through like a real life example of two organizations playing well together.
yeah, for sure. Okay. So, I'll first talk about like, what is our vision? What's our mission? And then I'll talk
Mm-hmm.
about like what co-selling is and how it works. So really our vision, right, is to make sales more human, right? Because it's become so transactional, and so, so transactional, and it's kind of gone from, door to door to phone to email to LinkedIn. And now it's like, sales teams are sending like, handwritten cards and gift that everything kind of goes like in a
Full
circle,
circle.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, our vision, right, is to make sales more human. Really, how we do that is by unlocking relationships between partners, right? So companies that are going after the same market that are non-competitive, or even like channel partners working with software manufacturers.
Oh, brilliant.
And we want to create this like network of interconnected CRMs, right? Which is like, ultimately this layer that sits on top of all these CRMs, where companies can go to market together, right? So they can find overlap where, where one company may have a prospect and another has a customer, or vice versa. So you can drive, warm intros, share sales insights. So it's kind of like this community intelligence for companies that are looking to go to market together. And so, I think there's, how it works today, right, is you log in through Salesforce, you invite another partner, and then co-sell does all the heavy lifting of finding out where there's this overlap, which in some cases is like millions of rows of data, right, between companies that we're then kind of analyzing. So,
so do you sit? You're just a Salesforce play. You sit in the middle of Salesforce connecting two Salesforce installations together.
Yeah. So we have Salesforce, we have CSV uploader, right? So if there's a sales rep that wants to sign up, they can sign up and upload a CSV without having to get approvals to connect to Salesforce. And then obviously there's like a whole plethora of all these CRMs, right? There's HubSpot and Zoho and Zendesk. And then, those will all be a fast follow just because, they're just the API docs are a lot more like, easy to, easy to understand compared to Salesforce.
Right.
Yeah.
So how's Salesforce been as a partner? We did a deal with Microsoft when I was in the Valley, and Microsoft had a reputation of being just a big, slow, terrible company to work with. And what we found was they were nimble, they were quick, and they were generous with their connections and making introductions. It was like a dream partnership, and it was totally different than we expected. So how's Salesforce been?
Yeah. So, for us, like we haven't yet gotten on their app exchange, right? Because like today, right, it's just read access. So, you'll connect to Salesforce, co-sell will sync with it, but we're not actually doing any like read write. So the plan, right, will be to, partner with Salesforce. But yeah, today that's hasn't been the case. And honestly, I don't have a whole lot of data points around like the quality, what to expect, right? So we'll have to go down that path, once we get there. So
just remember, when you meet their executives, tell them they look incredibly beautiful. But
right. Yeah. Right.
that never fails. Always go back to the tried and true. So, Pete, give me an example of one of your clients working with another, and what's the reality of that, and what's the benefit of that?
Yeah. And in fact, like I was just speaking with head of growth about like putting some case studies on our site.
Nice.
And so yeah, before I get in trouble for like sharing case study data, I can basically like give you an example of how this would work. And so
give me a real life example, but change their names and say stuff like, "This is not ABC Company." No,
yeah, right. Yeah. So so just think like Zoom and Slack, right? Mm-hmm. So Zoom is going after a very similar market to Slack, right? But they're non-competitive. Right. I was actually recently in the Atlanta airport, and I saw, it was like a billboard, right? Said, Zoom and Slack better together, right? So it's like the perfect type of partnership. And so, Zoom, right? They're having like these parallel conversations to Slack. And so Zoom is, reaching out to the same buyer. And they're likely both on like two different Salesforce instances. And so, we would really go to the VP of sales or CRO at Zoom, or even like the head of partnerships at Zoom or Slack, and say, hey, I see you have a partnership with Slack. Let's power that on co-sell, right? And so, the CRO or partner manager or partnership person would sign up, and then they would invite the sales team, right? And so once the sales team's invited, they're really the end users, right? Because they're the ones that are driving the co-selling. Right. And so they would log in, and really what they would see is like the overlaps that they specifically own. And so, if I'm a sales rep, I have 200 named accounts. I want to see what accounts can I actually leverage, Slack, right? My partner to get in front of, right? And so, through co-sell, I can request an intro into an account. And, I think it's like, warm intros, referrals are like 40x, higher conversion than cold outreach. So it's a big deal, right? And so about half of our customers are paying. So we obviously have like paying customers, then a bunch of free users that are just like tied in with these paying customers on co-sell. Half of them have closed at least one deal, right, through co-sell, like one partnership deal within the first 2 months of using co-sell. So it's working, right? And so I think the biggest challenge for most companies, right, is like, how do you get partnerships and sales to work together? And how do you get them to stay in sync, right? And so like there is this fundamental shift that has to happen among salespeople where, the playbook that is being run today, right, of just scorching the earth with 1 million emails and 1 million calls and, doing all this automation, that's just seeing diminished returns, and, prospects are fatigued. And so
definitely. So let me ask you, so Zoom salesperson reaches out to Slack. Slack says, hey, I've got a really great relationship at T. Rowe Price.
Right.
Zoom person closes that deal. Is there any commission, or is it a thank you, or like what's the transactional nature to keep this going?
Yeah, most that's the great question, right? Because it's like, what's in it for me, right? That's always the question, question that salespeople ask, right? Is it's kind of happening offline today, right? Which is, deal ends up closing, and then, in some cases a 10, 20, 30% referral goes to the company, right, that made the intro. We actually look to power that eventually, right, and do the payment processing so it can all happen on platform. But majority of companies, right, they'll send over the referral agreement, and it's kind of because we're able to connect to the Salesforce, right, we'll know when a deal's closed won that was, as a result of an intro. So at least we can share that data, but all the payment happens offline.
Nice. So what's the biggest block from you guys really taking off? Like because in concept, it sounds great. Yeah. And it's like, would you buy this product? Absolutely 100%. And then you come out with the product and you say, that's going to be $1,000. And they're like, well, not so fast. So what do you think could be a barrier of you guys actually going big?
Yeah. So I think we have to get a lot right with regards to product, right? I think our go-to-market fit, it's very clear, right, that there's a ton of pain, right, among heads of sales and sales teams, like breaking into accounts. Obviously, there's more companies than ever before that are getting funded, right? And so, you have this kind of lower tier of startups, earlier startups, right, that are then having to compete with like these huge enterprises, right? And so, going at it alone, I think that those days are kind of over, right? It's, I think the companies that have, if you look at any like massive company, right, most of them have really doubled down in the ecosystem play, right? And when you look at kind of early days with Salesforce, like they were ahead of the game in the enterprise and creating the app exchange, right? And so, that's ultimately how you create a platform, right, around your business and a moat. And so, I think the companies that are looking at co-selling, and saying, hey, this is the path that we want to take, right? Will likely be rewarded, right? And I think I think with what we've seen, it's like the companies that are adopting co-selling, right, and partnerships have a competitive disadvantage or competitive advantage, right?
Right.
And I think over time, what we may see is like the companies that are not adopting this, they'll be at a competitive disadvantage, right? For not kind of jumping on it. And so I think for personally as a company though, I think it's like, we have to get a lot right with product, right? But I think, that's really what keeps me up at night, if I'm being honest, right? But it's likely a concern of, most founders, right?
Absolutely. Pete, we're going to keep an eye on what you guys are doing. It's a brilliant, brilliant idea. In the past, we've done deals with other companies and they always fall apart because of the infrastructure in place. And also because of that, then you start getting more distant and then it's like, but what were we thinking? So I think this is going to be a really, really great play. Thank you for bringing it out and thank you for being on the show. And before you go, can you share one mind hack, a simple trick that you use that helps you become more productive or close more deals?
For sure. Yeah. So this is kind of a Trello plug, right? Which is I set up recurring cards, right, every day that on Trello, right? And so every day I get this list filled with recurring Trello cards, right? So I'll have one card for meditation, another one for working out, another one for putting in 10 to 12 hours a day in work, another one for, did I spend time with my fiance? And so I have these reoccurring cards and then I move them to a list, right, in Trello.
Nice.
And then I push that list to another board where it's stored and it counts up all the cards. So by the end of the week, I can look at, okay, how did I fill my jar up with the things I was looking to accomplish that are
nice.
Again, these are kind of personal things, but I think the personal stuff that you work on really affects a lot of the work pieces, right? And so, the working out and meditation, that affects how well you do at your job, right? And so, that's kind of just a little hack I've discovered, and so
nice.
It's what I recommend it. And if anyone has any questions about how to set it up, happy to. We're
going to put all your links in the show notes so people can find co-sell and you and your hack. And just one last thought before we leave. I had 2 nights of not good sleep 3 nights ago. And so I play squash every morning. I didn't play yesterday, but I played this morning after a good night's rest and not playing yesterday. Yeah. And I was a freaking animal today. I was unstoppable.
Oh, really?
So sometimes you need to take a rest no matter what you're doing to just charge up the batteries so you do your very best. And Pete, thanks so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise. Thanks a lot, Umar. Appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. And if you're looking for more tools, go to my website at nolimitselling.com. I've got a free mind training course there that's going to teach you some insights from the world of neuro-linguistic programming, and that is the fastest way to get better results.